following podcast is brought to you by the Johners Podcasting Network, found exclusively at wrestlingwithjohners.com. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the latest episode of Wrestling with Johners. We are live on a Tuesday evening across Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. And what a better way to spend a Tuesday evening than listen to me witter on for the next hour with my next wonderful guest, Big Jim Diehard. Jim, how the devil are you, buddy? Nice to have you on the show.
How you doing, John? I'm pretty good. I'm tired, but I've had a pretty rough few days. But yeah, we're coming out the right end of it now, so I'll be all right.
Busy. And this interview's 24 hours delayed, but it doesn't matter. We are here. We are talking. And if you have any questions for Jim, if you want to send your questions through, any comments or questions for Jim Diehard, you can do. Send them through to us using your chosen device. They'll ping through to us, and I'll bring the questions up during this live broadcast. So if you know Jim, or if you want to get to know Jim better, send your questions through. But Jim, first of all, thank you for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. It's been fun kind of bumping into you at the various shows this year in particular. But one thing I want to talk to you about, it's not wrestling at all. It's not wrestling related. But let me just bring up a little graphic here, Jim. And let's talk about Gladiators, shall we? Because I saw a tweet of yours, Jim, a few days ago. They're obviously bringing back that legendary TV show from the 90s and from the early 2000s. And you at least via Twitter, you've thrown your hat into the ring. You fancy yourself as a bit of a gladiator. Well, was you a fan of the show when you were growing up? Do you remember Gladiators?
I'm just the right age demographic for Gladiators. Was like early 90s to sort of mid to late 90s, I guess. And I was just the perfect demographic for that. I was a wrestling fan, and it was kind of like wrestling, but not like wrestling. Like, yeah, man, Gladiators was incredible TV when I was a kid. I loved it. And you know, you got to throw your hat in the ring with these things. I know I'm not a traditional gladiator-shaped guy. I've seen a few wrestlers, you know, your Shreddies and guys like that have mentioned about maybe getting the call for gladiators. Yeah. I think I'd make an excellent gladiator. I'd be very different to anyone else. And you know what? You tell me any of the old gladiators that could have taken me in a fisty.
None of them. Absolutely none of them. Absolutely none of them, Jim. And the reason why I say that is because you're an absolute beast. You're a brick wall. Who's going to run past you? None of them contestants are going to run past you. But I like this one as well. Hand me my pugil stick. Now look at that face. You kind of
would you want to be a 15-foot platform staring into those eyes, holding a big giant cotton bud in his hand, about to knock your head off?
Mate, I would jump off the second I saw you. Exactly. Especially with your gladiator outfit. Can you imagine? You'd look like some long lost cousin of the Viking Raiders or something with a pugil stick.
I say, I would definitely go for the Saracen two-piece, which was the sort of hot pants with the bikini top kind of thing, the sports bra for men, which I don't think that look gets enough respect by the pro wrestling community. For one thing, I think Saracen was quite the pioneer, and I'm amazed that nobody's followed since then.
Well, I look forward to seeing that on Gladiators in 2023. But
let's hope so.
What would be your gladiator name then, Jim?
Hoss, Big Hoss.
Yeah,
yeah.
Love it, absolutely love it. But say coming to a TV near you soon. ITV, watch out. But seriously, this man, like I say, I would not want to be standing across from him with a pugil stick. And
give me the call.
Before I kind of take a deep dive into your wrestling career, Jim, you're one of the most renowned super heavyweights on the UK circuit. I think this year marks your 20th year in the business. Feel free to correct me, but I think at 20 years this year. So congratulations on that, my friend. But super heavyweight wrestling, like I say, used to be massive, popular in the 80s, the 90s. Not so much nowadays. Now, I've had a few big guys on my show before. Will Cruz, Reese and Rogan, and now yourself, one or two from the States. But talk to me about your thoughts and feelings on big men, super heavyweight wrestling in the UK right now. What's that kind of style of wrestling? Is it one that you think could be improved upon? Do tell me your thoughts on super heavyweights in the UK in 2022?
I mean, we've got some good super heavyweights in this country, but not a staggering number of them, which I ain't going to say that's a bad thing. I'll never complain about lack of, because for one thing, it makes me more unique that there aren't as many guys around that are over that sort of 20 stone mark. There's not too many of us. So it means that guys like me and Will, we rarely will bump into each other, because it's good to have kind of the one guy on the show that fills that gap. So every now and then, we'll get thrown in a match against each other. Like I just got announced with, for the Hammerlock show. I've got a match with, remind me the name, Andy Wild.
That's correct. Yeah.
The Scottish guy. Yeah. His name just totally escaped my head there.
He's a big dude. He's quite a big guy.
There. I can picture him clear as day in my head. But matches like that are quite few and far between. I'll normally be in a mismatch kind of a situation, as you've seen me in quite a few times, I'm sure. But it is a style that has stood the test of time. Obviously, there's always been that sort of wow factor of seeing the super heavyweight make his way to the ring. There always will be, the wow factor in that, because we're the kind of guys that you don't bump into in the street every day. When you see us, walking out in a leotard and that kind of thing, it is quite imposing. Obviously, that style has had to move with the times as well. You can't just be that sort of Big Daddy style of wrestler anymore. You have to be able to do a few more things than just stand there and let guys bounce off you. But I think you've got to pick your moments right with that. It wouldn't look right for me to try and keep up with the cruiserweight guys on a show, but I've got to have a few little things, a few little bag of tricks. Every now and then I've got to come off the ropes. I've got to do my dives and that kind of thing. And long live the super heavyweights,
Absolutely. Just going to bring up a few pictures here, Jim, and like I say, working out that's an impressive unit there for sure. Absolutely. And as I said earlier, Jim, this year marks your 20th year in the business, so that would be 2002 when you first started. What does it mean to you to have been in the business for 20 whole years then, Jim?
I mean, the 20 years thing is just a number to me. Like, it's nice to have that anniversary, but I don't want it to be people thinking that I'm saying that I'm a 20-year veteran of pro wrestling, because I'm simply not. 20 years of wrestling for me means you have been a full-time wrestler for 20 years, and the fact is I haven't. There were years when it was a struggle, and I'd have maybe as little as 10 matches in a year. And that, to me, that doesn't count as a year of pro wrestling. It's 20 years since I had my debut, but I'd never class myself as a 20-year experienced wrestler, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I've seen a lot of people come and go in that time. Obviously, I've crossed paths with a lot of people that have gone on to do some huge things. And I've got some great memories from throughout those 20 years, obviously. But no plans to slow down anytime soon.
No. And speaking of that, Jim, how do you feel kind of Jim Diehard is in 2022? I mean, in my opinion, from watching you, from doing the research on you, Jim, I think you're having the form of your life, to be honest with you. Certainly since pro wrestling came back in 2021, and 2022 has been a great year, but character-wise, performance-wise, the experience on top of that, do you feel that you're kind of at your peak or having some of your better moments this year and certainly in the last 12 months?
Yeah, I've had I can't complain about anything. Obviously COVID kind of knocked everybody off their game a bit. And I was no different to everybody else. I did the kind of, this is unique, so let's sit around and eat loads and have a few beers every night and just enjoy the slower pace of life while we can. Then a time came where we had sort of limited time where we could go and start training again. And I hadn't taken care of myself, and I realized something's wrong here, that I can't do what I used to do. I used to be a 25 stone guy that could move around the ring a bit. Right. And after taking, a year or however long it was away from doing that, I hadn't looked after myself as well as I should. I was weightlifting. I had access to weightlifting equipment, but I just turned into a powerlifter that could lift weight, but couldn't really move too much. And yeah, I kind of had to take care of that. So, I just got my head down and I was determined, no, I'm going to come back. And I lost a little bit of weight, and then I was determined I was going to come back in the best shape I've ever been in. I think with pro wrestling, your mind and your body have kind of time where your mind for the business meets your physical capabilities in the business, if that makes any sense to you at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you might, physically you're able to do stuff when you're younger that you can't do when you're older, but your mind for the business is not where it needs to be when you're at your physical peak. But there is a time when you hit that sweet spot where you're physically in a good place, you're mentally in a good place, and everything just kind of comes together. And I think maybe I'm in that place at the moment. I think, some of the guys, like, by today's standards, I'd probably be considered a veteran or one of the older guys in the business. But if you look back to, like, the top guys in the business traditionally were guys that were around 40 years old. You know what I mean? Like, the guys that really had their big top runs were all around about the age of 40. And I think that's where that physical and mental crossover kind of, it just links up in the right place. So, yeah, I think I've got some good years ahead of me. And I think, I would agree with you. I'm having a really good year at the moment. I'm definitely not doing as much as I have been in the previous years, but I'm kind of picking my spots a bit more carefully.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that's quite noticeable about yourself since the return is, there's been quite a few new promotions crop up over the last 12 months.
Yeah.
Your likes of P.E.W, Phenomenal Elite Wrestling, your likes of Colosseum, Wrestle Carnival, and one or two others. And you've actually been a big part, or maybe a small part in certain promotions, but you've been a part of those new groups coming to the fore. How have you enjoyed kind of coming back and performing for some of them new groups that have broke out and tried to make their name in the last 12 months?
It's been great. I mean, it's always a good feeling when somebody is starting a promotion and within the first couple of shows, your name is on the list, especially when it's the very first show and your name is on the list of people that they want involved in it. That feeling, the novelty of that never wears off. That it's like that, like you always say, if you're going to start a wrestling promotion, list the guys that you would want involved. And I don't know if it's just a financial thing or what the deal is. I don't know if I'm anyone's fantasy roster or anything like that, but it is a good feeling to be, in at ground zero with promotions that I'm hopefully going to see, keep growing and growing and growing and being a foundation of some of those promotions. I'd like to think that I'll still be involved in, like I say, the Hammerlock relaunch is coming back. Resurgence. So I've got my T-shirt there. I've been with them since the very, very beginning when they first started. And I'm still with them to this day. So, yeah, it is a good feeling. I do enjoy being a part of things right from the start, see how they grow, see who comes and goes, and hopefully I'll stay with them.
Absolutely. And sticking with P.E.W, Phenomenal Elite Wrestling, because you've been with them, I think, for their entirety. I think that they've had 5 shows. You've been involved with all 5. You've been a featured performer as well. I think you were involved in a triple threat to crown their first champion. I think it was yourself, Martin Kirby, and Callum Newman. And you were involved in an open challenge recently with P.E.W as well. So you're being featured as one of their top heels, and you've been there for all 5 shows. That's pretty cool. And I think P.E.W are doing some really good things, despite the fact they're a new promotion and you're in the thick of things, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, the P.E.W, it's been a learning curve for the team in charge of that, for sure. I think there is a tendency when people start a new promotion that wrestlers will maybe try and take advantage of them. My advice to any wrestlers that are paying attention to this right now, look after those new promoters and they will repay that to you. I assure you of that. You can take the money and run on day 1, and then there may not be a day 2. You look after them for the start, you help them along, teach them the way, tell them how best to use you, be fair with what you're asking from them, treat them well. Don't treat them like, oh, here's a guy with money that I could take advantage of. It's just, there's no longevity to that. There's no good reputation to come from that. I am getting into a little bit of politics here of stuff that's gone on there.
Carry on.
Yeah, it was a shame that did happen in the beginning, but I know that they're in a stronger position now. They have a stronger management structure there, and it's only going to get better from here. I can assure you of that. And I'm happy that I did my part to, keep things ticking along there. And in turn, I've been very well looked after there. Like you say, I'm in a great spot there. Me, Ivy, Kirby, we're all raising hell over there on a regular basis. So look forward to seeing what comes next. I'm going to be back there this Saturday, I believe.
Yes, I think you've
And I
got
think,
this
Toby
match here.
Valentine made a cute little video yesterday, calling me out, making lots of claims about how he's going to be, chucking me around with his farm boy strength and whatnot. But we'll see what happens there, Toby.
He's a strong dude. He's a strong dude, but he's got his.
Toby's a good lad. He's a good lad. A
Yeah,
little bit naive, to be making them sort of comments towards me. But yeah, he's a good lad, Toby. So I look forward to seeing him in the ring again. I'll be there.
Absolutely looking forward to the rematch there. And of course, we briefly mentioned Wrestle Carnival. That was one of the places we've kind of met at this year. And it was at the HMV Empire in Coventry, your home turf, your hometown. And you was involved in this match here. The four-way, the Carnival Scramble match. You got another hometown boy there, George Lydon, yourself, Big Guns Joe, Tommy Carl. That was a fun match, but that was probably Wrestle Carnival's most attended show in a new venue for them. And that place was absolutely rocking that night. And you had some big imports like Eric Young, Scotty Too Hottie, and like I say, your match, that scramble match. Give us your kind of thoughts on that show as a whole, because being a Coventry boy, seeing a wrestling show kind of be as popular and as loud as that one was, that must have been, must have filled you with a lot of pride knowing that was taking place in your hometown.
No, absolutely. It's great to do anything in Coventry is ideal for me. It enables me to tell people, you've always wanted the people that tell you, oh, hey, I need to come and see you wrestle sometime. Well, here I am right on your doorstep. Come and see me wrestle. And there's a lot of nostalgia for me, of walking through the city centre that I grew up in as a teenager. I'd go to, there was a HMV, used to be literally like 5 doors down from there, where I'd go and pick up my ECW videotapes and my Attitude Era posters from my bedroom wall and stuff like that. So to be in a ring, sharing a dressing room with the likes of Scotty Too Hottie and just a few steps down the road from where I kind of grew up, it is pretty cool to be able to do stuff like that in your hometown. And I see Wrestle Carnival, they've got plans to be back there next year. Hopefully I'll be a part of those plans. Just stay tuned for that. But just keep supporting them, guys. Like you say, these kind of shows will only be around as long as people are there to support them. So I hope people in Coventry, the West Midlands, and wrestling fans in general, keep supporting promotions like Wrestle Carnival. I know, Gary puts a hell of a lot of effort into his shows to make sure that the cards are absolutely stacked every time. And best of luck to him. And I hope he's going to continue to fill up that venue as he did last time. It was, like you say, absolutely rocking in there.
It really was. It really was. And like I say, that the HMV Empire in Coventry is going to be Wrestle Carnival's regular home from 2023 onwards. Right. And like I say, I hope to see you there more often, and especially, the big hoss man, the henchman. But it's got to happen. It's got to happen. Take us all the way back, Jim, to when wrestling first came into your life. Maybe as a young child, but when did wrestling first come into your consciousness as a fan, and when did you fall in love with the great sport?
So for me, see, my mum will always tell me that she took me to a holiday camp show when I was a kid. I was definitely too young to remember that. I have no memories of that whatsoever. But the first thing I ever remember seeing was my cousin, who is about 5 years older than me. I was maybe, I'm going to say I was 6 at the time. And my cousin, who was probably about 10 at the time, used to come over to our house every weekend. And this one day he turned up with these VHS cassettes recorded off the TV. And on the, you used to get the slip cover for the VHS, the cardboard slip cover.
Yeah.
It was covered with WWF stickers of like different wrestlers. It was like Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan, and guys like that on there. And these tapes were Royal Rumble 1990, Royal Rumble 1991, and SummerSlam 1991.
Nice.
And I just watched those 3 tapes over and over and over and over again. And I was just, from the get-go, I was absolutely gripped by it. I'd never seen anything like it before. It was just absolutely mind-blowing to me. The guys that I remember that really stuck out for me, and I'll tell this to people all the time, Road Warriors, Legion of Doom, what 6-year-old could look at that and not think, this is the best thing I've ever seen in my life? And then the other guy was Big Boss Man, who was giving me inspiration for my latest nickname that I'm trying to get going, the Big Hoss Man.
Yeah.
But Boss Man, he was a by the time I started watching, he was a big, friendly police officer, big fat guy with a flat top and a goatee, spinning that nightstick around in his hand, and just what's a simpler story than that? Here's the policeman to beat up the bad guys and put them in jail. So simple, but wow, I was captivated from the first time I saw that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so that was from a young age, I'm guessing. How did your tastes change as you kind of matured as a wrestling fan? Did you kind of branch off into, I don't know, promotions from around the world or more indie wrestling? How did your kind of wrestling fandom change as you grew up?
I mean, there wasn't really an indie wrestling scene to speak of when
No.
I was a fan of it. That certainly nothing that you could really get aware of. So that was from the age of 6. I was a WWF guy. We had cable in our house, so I could watch Superstars every weekend, and then Raw when that came along eventually. There was the big dip in the business around 94, 95,
Yeah.
when it just kind of wasn't the cool thing to watch anymore. Nobody in the playground was talking about WWF anymore, and everyone had just kind of moved on to, football or whatever. And then I think one day I just picked up like a Power Slam magazine in the newsagents down the street from me, and I took it home and read it when I was we're talking like 97, 98 now. And I read through this, and I kind of caught myself up on what was going on in the world, and started tuning into Raw, because Raw just started getting hot again. Steve Austin was just kind of becoming the guy. This was like just as Shawn Michaels was walking away and Steve Austin was becoming the guy. And I got back into it from that moment. Every Friday night, if you remember the Friday Night Wars on UK, there was TNT would show Nitro and Sky Sports would show Raw at the same time.
Absolutely.
And you
Yeah.
could flick between them on a Friday night.
Yeah.
And I used to do that every Friday. I'd have a couple of my buddies would come round. One of them was Benson Destruction, my tag team partner, and a guy called Dave we used to hang out with. And we would just sit there and flick between the two shows on a Friday night. And I just continued as a fan from there. Like I say, I was reading the Power Slam magazine. They had reports every now and then on a company called NWA UK Hammerlock. And they started running shows in Bedworth, just down the road from me. And a band of us got together and we went and watched one of the Hammerlock shows one night with Jim the Animal Neidhart. And I was like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. And it was with NWA Hammerlock, wasn't it, that you kind of cut your teeth? Is that where you started your training?
That's where I started. So what happened was Hammerlock was based down in Kent, which it's going to be again when it comes back, run by Andre Baker. Guys like John Ryan, Johnny Moss were like coaches down there. So they opened a second training school, which was going to be run by a guy called Magic. And Magic happened to live in Coventry. So the training school opened up in Coventry, as it happened, 10 minutes from my house. And I just turned 16 when it opened. And my mum would drive me there every Sunday afternoon. I'd go and learn holds. It was a Aikido center. I put a photo up of it. I passed it a few months ago, and I put a photo on my Instagram of it. And I just happened to drive past it, and I was like, I've got to stop and take a picture here. This is where it all began. And you'll see this building is no more than 7 foot high from the outside, right?
Wow.
And it's just completely flattened judo mats that have never, ever been changed. I imagine they're still the same ones in there now that were there in 2002. Just judo mats with a blue tarpaulin pinned to the ground. And that's where we learned to take falls and link up and stuff like that. I didn't see the inside of a wrestling ring for 8 months after I started training. But that's where it all began, was right there. And that was like an affiliate school of Hammerlock. And then that was in the July of 2001. And then in the March of 2002, the tour was happening again. And all of the trainees knew that the Hammerlock show was going to be in Bedworth on the Friday night. So the Sunday before, everybody showed up for training. We're not talking like training schools now. I know the ones that I've been to maybe will pull, I don't know, 10 or 15 students on an average week. The NWA school in Coventry was pulling like 30 people every Sunday without fail. So it was packed this one day. And we're going through the warm-ups and everything. And everyone's thinking the same thing. You just know everyone's thinking the same thing. Am I going to get asked to do the Bedworth show next Friday? And as it happened, there was a Rumble match going on. And I was one of maybe 4 or 5 of us that got invited to go along and do the Rumble. But then I had to source a gimmick and gear within like 5 days. And we're talking 2002 now. So there was just nothing available. You could not just, there was no, I'm going to buy a pair of tights on eBay, and that just didn't exist at all. You had to scour
what did you
the corners
do?
of 2002 internet, call on favors from relatives that had a sewing machine, and throw together something.
Crazy times. But correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your initial gimmick, and I've got two names here. I've got Jekyll and I've got Quentin Hyde Styles. Jekyll and Hyde. Is that right? Those were the two names that you went under. Were those the two names you went under?
The Jekyll and Hyde thing. Yeah, so Jekyll was the initial gimmick with the mask and everything.
Right.
I think I was probably doing that for about a year, and then I came up with the Quentin Hyde Styles thing because I just wanted, like, it was, I kind of restricted myself with the gimmick I was doing, with the look that I'd gone for. I felt like I want to just be an idiot and be that idiot villain that talks big and then makes a fool of himself. I really, really wanted to do that, and it just didn't work with the Jekyll thing that I was doing at the time, and I just wanted to do it as kind of a little side project. So I had the Jekyll and the Hyde, and sometimes I do the both on the same show. But yeah, that was super fun. Always fun doing that.
Oh man. And what sort of reactions were you getting from the audience? So, and were you kind of the big kind of Hoss type Jim Diehard, but 20 years ago? Was you as big a character back then? What sort of a wrestler were you?
I was just a chubby teenager at the time. Right. I was bigger than most of the guys that I was training with, but then when I went to the shows, everyone dwarfed me. So I'd been going to training every week and throwing guys around because they were, 30 or 40 pounds lighter than me, and I could do that. But then when I started going and working shows, suddenly I was the small guy that all I knew was how to do big man stuff. So I started doing this weird. I was like, man, it was just a mess. Like, I wish I could say I have great memories of the classic matches I had, but I don't have any memories of doing classic matches then. I was just an idiot trying to figure it all out back then. I had this weird obsession with Tajiri and Super Crazy and all the stuff that they could do in ECW, but I was too heavy and unathletic to do it. I was crazy big into Loki at the time, so I just wanted to kick everybody as hard as I could, which, I got put in a match with Johnny Kidd once, and I was hoofing him all over the place in the most appalling way that I'm embarrassed to even think about how I kicked the hell out of Johnny Kidd in my first year in a wrestling match, you know what I mean? But I was really just figuring it all out then, and just having fun with my buddies, really, and just, it was like such a novel thing that, like, being a fan of it from the age of 6, and then here I am suddenly 17, 18, and I'm like, I'm actually doing this. And like Mike Magic, who's still like a super close friend of mine to this day, who is going to be on the Hammerlock comeback shows, he was my original coach, and to his credit, he started up this training school. He made sure we were coached every week the right way, respectfully, and taught me a lot of lessons about how the business works and things like that. Not only did he teach us how to wrestle, but, he was great at teaching us the promo side of things, teaching us every role you will ever need to do, because we were all getting stuck in, we'd build the rings, we'd go out postering, all that kind of thing. And he really taught us how to do the job respectfully. He was putting on shows for us near enough every month, and we were running like just our training group. We kind of branded it as Midlands Pro Wrestling when there wasn't really a big Midlands scene to speak of. We were running shows in like a leisure centre in front of 200 people, and it was just all trainees. And we were in this huge leisure centre. We had a decent wrestling ring. We had an entranceway, lights, pyrotechnics. They really, really went to town on this, and I can't thank Mike enough for that, for giving us that experience. And like I say, we were just a bunch of wet teenagers, really living our dreams, and Mike is so much to thank for that.
That's awesome. I want to fast forward a little bit, and I don't know what you remember about 2010, but doing my research, 2010 seems to be a bit of a notable year for you, and you had quite a few turns over in Belgium for a company called B Catch Wrestling. What do you remember what do you remember about your tours of Belgium? Well, they probably weren't tours. I don't know whether they just kind of sent you over there, a couple of matches and back again. But you had matches against Dave Mastiff back in 2010, Brittany Knight and the Zebra Kid, of course, Paige and Zach Knight. You had, I think you had probably the following year, you was involved in a tag match against Tommy End, and then another match, Jody Fleisch and Johnny Storm. So they looked after you over in Belgium and put you in some pretty good matches, some great opportunities.
Man, you know
but that seems to be a great year.
I've forgotten a lot of what you'd even said then until you mentioned it. Like, my memory is so shot, to be honest with you. So this was just a guy that, again, I go back to Magic, who toured with an English guy that lived in France called Nathan. And he was, so when Mike was working over in France, he got linked up with Nathan. Nathan came over to Coventry to watch one of my shows, which was a Triple X wrestling show that I used to run way back when. And suddenly Nathan was involved with a couple of French guys that were going to start promoting shows in Belgium. And for some reason, like on a list of guys that was like Zack Sabre Jr., Roy Knight, Brittany Knight, Jody Storm, Johnny Fleisch, Johnny Storm and Jody Fleisch, all these amazing UK guys. Doug Williams was there, Dave Mastiff, some incredible guys. And then my name was on the list. And it happened a few times. And they really took care of us over there. You know, that was my first experience of like doing things like going on the Eurostar. They would pick us up in a minibus there and take us to the show, where there would be like food and drink backstage aplenty. It was like open bar all day. Because in Europe at that time, there weren't that many decent wrestlers around, not like there are now. There's loads of great, incredible wrestlers in Europe at the moment, but there weren't a great deal over there. So they would quite heavily rely on bringing over like British guys. And I remember that first show. I don't know if you checked the card for that first one, but guys like, I think Tajiri was on that show. And there was like Chris Masters, Shelton Benjamin. Sami Zayn was on one of the early shows when he was in his previous guys. I don't know if I'm not going to expose him here, but you know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
I'd go over there and they'd tell me, okay, you're going to go out and beat up Brittany Knight, and then you and Dave Mastiff will have a hardcore match in front of, it was like 2,000 people in this building. And it was absolutely insane. Again, it was, you know, the production was absolutely second to none. They really took care of us over there. I can remember now, I was stuck on a motorway. I think we were going to the north of France somewhere to do the second or third show when I was in the tag team match with Tommy End. And I think we were stuck in traffic for something like 10 hours or something crazy like that. I remember Spud went for a walk on the side of a motorway just to get some air or something like that. And suddenly the traffic started moving. Next thing we know, he's half a mile behind us being picked up by the police. Like the French police are asking, why is this small Englishman walking with this? At the time, like, you just started doing the rock star, so he had the big hair and he had the stringer vest on and the tight jeans and everything, and the big sunglasses, and he's walking down the hard shoulder of some French motorway. We've like shot about half a mile away from him. He's getting picked up by the police now, who are trying to quiz him, but they don't speak any English and he didn't speak any French. The promoter is in the driver's seat of this minibus in such a flap because he's got half of his show is in his car, now getting questioned by police on the side of the motorway. Next thing I know, I'm backstage at this show, and I think it was me and a French guy against Tommy End and another French guy. But the French guys didn't speak any English. We didn't speak any French. So I think me and Tommy kind of had to just work on our side of things, leave them to do their side of things, and linked up somewhere at the end. But that was pretty cool. And like you say, me and Adam Shame, who's now Coach Tripp up in ICW, we got to wrestle Johnny and Jody, that was a big thing to tick off the list for British wrestling. As far as that goes, that's a pretty big special tag match that you get to have there.
Absolutely. Speaking of tag matches and tag teams, What about these guys here then? The henchmen.
What about those guys?
Wow, come on. Now, 2012 seemed to mark a huge change in your career, a gimmick change, a name change, joining up with Benton Destruction. I absolutely think that's one of the best wrestling gimmick names ever, to be honest with you. I had to read it a couple of times before it really sank in, but that's absolutely fantastic. But the Henchmen were born in about 2012. So a lot of changes for you around that time, name, tag team partner. Give us what were the circumstances that led to all them changes in 1 year, and then kind of from then off, you and your Benton, the henchman, were off to the races, weren't you?
So me and Benton, I'm just going to call him Ben for short here. Not that
that's easier, yeah.
We'll just call him Ben for the sake of ease here. So me and Ben, we were like super best buddies since we were like 12 or 13. We met when we were in secondary school. I think he was a huge guy. Like even when we were in school, he was like the biggest guy in school by a long way. When we were like year 8 or year 9, he was like this big giant guy. He had like his entire head shaved apart from just like the fringe coming forward at the top, which was a thing for some reason. I don't know why that was a thing, but that was his thing. And he was like just this massive guy that was bigger than everybody else at school. And he was so quiet, you know, through like a mutual friend, he found out that I was into wrestling or something like that. And I ended up giving him a tape or a CD or something like that. It was some weird thing that I was a guy that had something that he wanted. And we made contact. And we just, like, both of us bonded over being the weird fat kids in school that were into wrestling and Insane Clown Posse, basically. And we started wrestling together at the same training school. Debuted just a few months apart, and we both kind of come to this point where, like, I'd done some stuff with Jekyll, and he'd done some stuff, and we were kind of going, you know, just parallel careers kind of thing. But neither of us had kind of got what we'd wanted out of it, and the gimmicks that we come up with in 2002 didn't really feel right in 2012, you know what I mean? Like the world had kind of moved on. That we were both doing these sort of semi-goth things that were like, you know, your XPWs and CZWs had loads of guys that were doing that, the pleather trousers and all that kind of thing in a new metal and all that. Was like, that was the thing in 2002, but in 2010, 2012, not so much anymore. So we were both at the point where, like, we're not getting booked anywhere. Our gimmicks are completely irrelevant, and it's looking like we're going to have to either wind down or completely reinvent ourselves. So we said, all right, we'll have one last crack at this and see how it goes. So at the time, we were just like training a couple of guys at this community center that Ben was working at the time. So we could kind of access it whenever we wanted to. And we just shot this stupid video of us. So where we were at is that we were kind of felt like we were veterans in our heads, you know, 10 years of part-timers in our heads, we were veterans. And we kind of got this inspiration to be, what if we were just, you remember when all the shoot videos came out of like the washed up 80s and 90s guys just complaining about the business, right?
Yeah.
We said, what if we were a parody of those guys, of just these washed up fat old guys that hate pro wrestling but can't let go of it? Wouldn't that be a great gimmick if we did that? So we shot this like silly vignette video of us both wearing like leotards with the Rocky Balboa cut up sweatshirts underneath, covered in sweat, and drinking beers and protein shakes and doing like old school exercises and doing like really boring, crappy submission holds that nobody uses anymore, and set it to the song We Fight for Love, which was the end credits of the Arnold Schwarzenegger film Commando. That's right. The song.
Gotcha.
And we just made it like as cheesy and low budget, low quality as possible. Stuck it on YouTube and said, here's a Twitter account, here's a Facebook account, bookers, basically. There was no wrestling content in it other than us beating up a trainee in a singlet. And surprisingly enough, Spud got like so far behind it, and he was doing really well at the time, and Spud got really behind it. He absolutely loved it, and he like promoted the hell out of it. And I can't thank him enough. We got so much work just off the back of Spud being so supportive of it and spreading the word of it. And it went like a little bit viral. Like I think that's something like 4,000 views in within like 2 or 3 days, and people were going, "This is brilliant," you know.
Yeah.
And there was no wrestling in it. There was no promo in it. It was just a couple of fat old guys presenting themselves as older, fatter guys, basically, that hated the job more than we've ever hated the job. And to our surprise, it just took off.
Yeah, I mean, it clearly worked because you two kind of tagged and worked together for close to a decade, and I think up
Yeah,
until last year, you guys were still working together as the henchmen,
yeah.
and I'm sure that there'll be many more matches with yourself and Ben down
Yeah,
the
it's not
road.
over
But
yet. It's definitely not over yet.
no. But yeah, I mean, 2013, 2014, you had a series of matches with the Hunter brothers, and you had such a good run with Ben. What other kind of highlights or memories kind of really stand out to you? Your kind of decade as one half of the Henchmen.
Sure, like the stuff in the ring pales in comparison to the fun that me and Ben have just being out on the road together. Like that,
Tell us about it.
it's crazy. Like that I got to do this with my best friend, who I've known my more than half of my life. You know, he was the best man at my wedding. I was the best man at his wedding, and we're just like super best pals. And he, to this day, he lives less than a quarter of a mile away from where I'm sitting right now. He's just around the corner from me. So to get to do that with your brother, basically, is quite a rare thing. I mean, we've done tours for All Star Wrestling, we've done the holiday camps and things like that, where you go away and live in caravans for a week with some like amazing cool people. You do your job in the daytime, you relax and enjoy yourself in the evening with a bunch of lads, and to do that with your best friend at your side, it's incredible. We went out to Germany together, did a weekend over in Germany, and yeah, I mean, we've worked against some incredible wrestlers, even like when they were in their very early days as well. We wrestled Aussie Open when they were first over here, and picked up the W there as well, I must note. We wrestled, like you say, the Hunter brothers countless times. We always have such a good time with Jim and Lee. We always had the best time in the ring with them, even when Lee absolutely goes to town on me with a folding chair and scrambles my brains a little bit. And yeah, I've got some great memories with Lee that I can't even tell you about, to be honest with you. But it was just incredible to get to have those times with someone who you're so close with.
Absolutely. And you mentioned All Star Wrestling there, and P.E.W is another company I want to bring up, because I think it's about 2018 or thereabouts when you made your debut for P.E.W. So between P.E.W and All Star Wrestling, two wrestling companies that have huge legacies within the British wrestling scene, and getting to kind of make your mark and have your matches with those two companies must have been pretty special for you.
Yeah, I mean, All Star Wrestling kind of was almost like the second rebirth for both of us. That the henchman thing, it had its sort of peak. We were doing okay with it, and then the novelty wore off a little bit, I guess.
Yeah.
And then just a chance encounter with James Mason. We ended up in a match with him. We gave him like a really easy match. And afterwards, he asked if we'd ever contacted Brian Dixon. And I, to that point, even at that stage, I don't know what year we even debuted with All Star. You might have that in front of you.
I do not. I think it was. No, I'd be wrong if I tried to guess right now.
I'd say it was probably around 2015, 2016 sort of time. We just had a chance encounter with James Mason, who I'd never met before that day. We had a match with him, and afterwards he said, "Have you ever sent your information to Brian Dixon?" And in my head, All Star Wrestling was like this absolutely impenetrable place where they have their crew and nobody else gets in. So I'd never even considered sending my information to All Star. And then James recommended that we did, and he said he put in a word for us, and we've absolutely never looked back. We debuted with All Star within a couple of weeks. We were wrestling at Victoria Hall in Hanley against Charlie Sterling and Dean Allmark. I mean, wow. Top of the bill. Yeah. What better way to debut in any promotion? And Brian Dixon took a liking to us as these sort of. I mean, Brian Dixon, like I say, he's always had a super heavyweight on his roster, but never really had a tag team of super heavyweights working for him quite so much as we were. We went all around the country wrestling guys like James Mason, Dean Allmark, Joel Redman, Charlie Sterling, what more could you ask for? You know,
Best of the best, yeah, best of the best.
Yeah,
absolutely.
and Brian was kind enough to invite us down to wrestle at Butlins and Haven Parks and every summer, and even weekends at Butlins. Nobody knew about it, but we'd go down and we'd be wrestling against Joel Redman and Charlie Sterling in front of 2,000 people at Minehead on a Saturday night, and nobody even knows that was happening, you know. But that's where we truly learned what we were doing. We have these 25, 30-minute matches every weekend with these huge reactions from the audience when, you know, we'd get stereo body slammed at the end of the match and the roof would come off the place, and wow, what a rush you get from that. Indescribable.
Absolutely. I've spoken to so many wrestlers on this podcast and how they rave about the importance of working the holiday camps and the repetitions, you know, the 14, 15 reps per week and more, 6 weeks solid. And that's where you really cut your teeth. That's when you really kind of learn about pro wrestling. But I want to talk to you about Southwest Wrestling, if I can, because I think for the last 2 or 3 years, they've become a bit of a home for you, and I know that you've got a fond love for Southwest Wrestling. And I know that just before lockdown, you had your last match for Southwest Wrestling against Simon Miller, and your first match back was for Southwest Wrestling as well. And you've had an incredible journey with them. But tell us a bit about Southwest Wrestling and what they mean to you and what they've done for your career in that time.
So Southwest Wrestling, Pete Bainbridge, specifically the promoter there, who was an old World of Sport guy. Pete Bainbridge was one of, like, I think he may have been the youngest person ever to wrestle on Euros on World of Sport back in the 80s. Such a great guy, funny man, great head for the business. Finally decided to get into the promotion side of things, and I wasn't even there from the very get-go. I was maybe a few shows in. It was actually through Jack Stars was working there, and I asked him if he put a word in with me because I was really keen to work on these shows because they really looked like they were going to be something. Like I say, I kind of have a feel for these things. I like to get in early when I can. So Jack was kind enough to put a word in for me. He had to basically pass by my house to get to the shows, and he managed to get me working down there. And it's just been great. I mean, some of the people I've got to work with down there that I never would have came across before. I'm going to just drop some names that people don't really know. Buzzsaw Bronson, who is the champion down there at the moment. Absolutely incredible worker who really doesn't get the credit he deserves outside of the Southwest where he's based. Dinger Bain, who you may have seen with the dungarees and the cow hat, that kind of deal. Good old country boy, cider swilling country boy. One of the nicest guys you'll ever meet in pro wrestling. Super good drinking buddy of mine at the Lake Fest that we do every year now. One of my favourite opponents to get in there and scrap with as well. You know, Pete's really put together something special down there. He's got a great team. If anyone upsets the balance on the team, they're very quietly dismissed from the team. And keeping it tight the way Pete has, and bringing in, picking spots to bring in some really good outside talent. I think he's absolutely got the nail on the head with this, really.
Absolutely.
I can't speak highly enough of him. And again, Lake Fest, the greatest party of the year.
Well, let's talk about that, because when I had LA Taylor on the show in May, I think it was May, and she was reminiscing about Lake Fest 2021. And I don't know if this brings back any memories, but you was in there. I think it was a handicap match, Little Legs or Kneecapper Murphy, LA Taylor versus yourself. And I think kind of that summer you had a series of handicap matches involving Kneecapper Murphy, Little Legs, and LA Taylor, and I think Pete was involved in one or two as well. But some great memories, and like I say, some great talent in the ring there, especially LA Taylor, who's just tearing it up at the moment.
Oh, LA Taylor, I would say, is one of my favourite people I've ever met in any walk of life. First of all, really, really great person, lovely human being. So nice to me, and as always, like, leaning on me for advice and things like that when I never think I'm the guy to be giving advice to anybody, who, especially someone as naturally talented as she is, that is absolutely killing it all over the place. It means the world to me that she still considers me something of a mentor. So she's just a super cool person who I love spending time with, especially love working with. But so Lake Fest last year, I think we did 3 days, and the last day was supposed to be All Warriors division, which is the women's division of Southwest Wrestling. But this being COVID in the way it was, Pete had so many dropouts. And bear in mind, we were in the middle of a field in Herefordshire with no phone service at all. So it was just kind of a case of on the day, see who turns up, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'd had, a bit of a party night the night before, and I was there in sort of a agent advisory kind of role on the Sunday for what was going to be the big blow-off show with the Warriors division. And then by the time it came around, we were so short of people to actually fill this show, and we'd been getting incredible crowds all weekend. And Gilligan Gordon put forward the suggestion of, what if you worked with LA Taylor? I've never met her to this point. Like, this was the first day that we met.
Really? Wow.
She was so nervous before this match happened. We'd never spoken before. We'd never worked together before. And I said, wouldn't it be cool if you gave me the body slam? And she was like, oh, no, there's no way I could do that. There you go. There's the picture. And she was absolutely certain there was no way she was going to be able to do that. I said, well, if you don't do it, what's the worst that happens? We'll try it. And if it happens, it'll be the greatest thing ever. I don't know if you can see in that picture there that you just posted, but if you look at the look on Little Legs' face, I don't know if you can zoom in on that, but the look of delight on Little Legs' face in that match is well worth zooming on. He looks so proud. And that's my favorite part of that picture, is how proud he looks, because he knew that she was nervous about giving that a try. And then again, she came down this year. We did like a little something this year in a 6-person tag team match, but like you say, we've done, because she's been part of the Evil House on the Southwest Wrestling shows, who actually turned on me, and of all things, I'm a babyface at Southwest Wrestling now most of the time. So we've been on opposite sides now, and I'm trying to catch up with her to give her a bit of a kicking. But no, LA Taylor, incredible person. Little Legs as well, or Kneecapper Murphy, is a guy who, again, I first met through All Star Wrestling. There was a few dates that Ben couldn't make it down, and Brian had been really hard to persuade to let me go on my own. He was really liked the tag team thing and wasn't sure about me coming in just as singles. And eventually, I either wore him down or he was just desperate enough that he needed an extra body. So I got to come in and do some stuff. And fairly shortly after that, I think he'd give me a couple of months on the road against Joel, and a couple of months against, a couple of weeks against James Mason. And then pretty shortly after that, I ended up working a lot with Little Legs. And same again, we did the holiday camp shows. What could be better visual than a guy like me against Little Legs on a holiday camp show? What more could you possibly want?
Absolutely.
He's got his routine, and I absolutely love being a part of his routine. It's the most fun you can have in a wrestling ring. I say that to anybody. It is a super fun match to be able to do, and I look forward to doing it every single time. And what a better way to earn a living! I say, like, there are times when I've made a mortgage payment touring the country wrestling Little Legs, and I think 6-year-old me would be quite proud of that.
Absolutely. I love both of them. I've had them both on the show before. Great interviews and really, really top guys. And speaking of Southwest Wrestling, I haven't been to a Southwest Wrestling show yet. I need to get down there. It's not too far from where I live, so I need to get my arse in gear and get down there for sure.
John, I'm going to put that together. I will put that together for you.
It's got to happen. It's got to happen. But we spoke about a few groups that you've made your debut for this year. Some new promotions, some not so new promotions. But what about Pro Wrestling Malta? Now, you took the trip, I think it was in about May, over to Malta, along with some of your close buddies within the business, and put on a show for the Pro Wrestling Malta fans there. There you are, up against another big guy, Yeston Reese. And like I say, it's not often you find somebody as big or as strong as you, Jim, but you did certainly against Yeston there. But tell us about your experience of going over to Malta, wrestling that show, the Maltese fans, and just what a blast you and the boys had while you were over there.
Such a good time. I don't know how much Kean has told you about the Malta trip.
A bit. There was a lot of drinking involved.
He told you the reason that we were there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So one of the guys was getting married. So and Gianni Valletta, who's the promoter over in Pro Wrestling Malta, and again he's a regular tour guy for All Star Wrestling. Another super nice guy. You wouldn't know. I think you probably met him down at the Cheltenham show, right?
I did. WPW, indeed.
So wild man in the ring, true gentleman outside of the ring, really great guy. So there was a stag party celebration was coming up, and it was decided we were going to take a trip to Malta. And Gianni obviously figured, well, we've got all of these exceptional British wrestlers and Big Jim coming over, and Ian Kelly as well. So let's make a show out of it, yeah? So we were there, I think, for 3 nights. And one of the nights we did a very English guy heavy wrestling show. What more can you say? We're in that venue, absolutely beautiful venue.
Beautiful venue, yeah.
Great crowd, huge crowd on hand there. Very responsive. Yestin, he's an old school guy like me, so we said, let's just go out there and tell the story that you can see. You look at him and you look at me. There's a very simple story there, so let's go out and tell that story. We didn't do a great deal of time. We did a fairly short match, stuck to the point, and got out of there. Great responses from the audience. Happy to do that again anytime. Wrestling Yestin, wrestling in Malta, absolutely both a big tick for me.
Absolutely. Would you ever consider turning it into an annual thing, getting you and the boys together, going over to Malta every summer, wrestling for Gianni? That would be quite a nice thing to put in the diary every summer, wouldn't it?
I think the Maltese border control would put a stop to that pretty quickly.
Oh, fantastic! One thing that's really stood out to me on the 2 occasions that I've met you, like I say, WPW in Cheltenham in February, Wrestle Carnival a month or so ago in Coventry, was your ability to perform a fantastic promo. Like I say, I don't think it was any major surprise to me. But you mentioned earlier that you had a bit of training in doing promos back in the early days. I don't know whether that kind of set the ground for you. But your ability to cut a good promo, a good fierce, old-fashioned, old-school kind of 1980s WWF style promo, it's not to be understated. Tell us about your confidence in front of the mic and your kind of, not necessarily your influences, but tell us a bit about your style and where this confidence comes from.
So yeah, like you say, and I said earlier, Magic was always put the emphasis on that side of the business. He was always, when the Hammerlock came to town, he was always the promo guy. He always wanted to make sure he had a gimmick and some kind of angle going into his match and wanted to tell that story. He told us, you've got to hit your big points about who you are, why you're talking, who you're against, when it's happening, where it's happening. Those real simple points, delete as necessary, obviously, but hit those points and sell tickets, basically. And then from then on, it's just about repetition. And he said, stand in a mirror and talk, and stand in a mirror and talk, and keep eye contact, and just practice and practice and practice. It's something that people don't do enough anymore, I think. That, guys will do promos, but I don't think they practice them enough beforehand, and they don't seem all that comfortable. And I think sometimes people are afraid to look stupid, that everybody wants to look like, I'm the smartest, I'm the biggest, and I'm not selling for anybody. Well, you'll see at the Wrestle Carnival promo that I did with you, I'm not afraid to look silly. I want to be this big blowhard that's there making excuses as to why I lost. I'm not going to coming up with these. I was 3-on-1. This is not fair. I could beat any of them in a 1-on-1 match and just be a blowhard like that.
Yeah.
Again, I think the 90s and 80s style of promo is so rare now that people have gone away from it, that it's become a novelty. It's become a novelty again, and it stands out because I'm not the quiet guy who's trying to stand there and sound educated. I'm not particularly educated, but I can speak. I can speak fairly eloquently, I think. But when I get into that zone of, I'm Big Jim and I'm just going to lower my eyebrows, I'm going to shout, I'm going to point my finger, and I'm just going to bellow at the top of my voice and be this big blowhard that I want people to listen to me, and I'm going to complain until I get my way, basically. And I think people are sometimes afraid to do that these days. And I draw inspiration from those like I say, I had those tapes of those Royal Rumbles when I was a kid, where every single guy that was in those Royal Rumbles in those days would get 10, 20 or 30 seconds, depending on their status on the card, to tell you why they're going to win the Royal Rumble. So you get the Bushwhackers are telling you they're going to win the Rumble. The Repo Man's telling you he's going to win the Rumble. You know, these guys that you know El Matador's not going to win the Royal Rumble, but he's going to look you in the eye and tell you that he will, you know?
Absolutely.
And they have to do that with grit and determination and try and convince you that anything can happen and anybody can win. And but I draw a lot of their inspiration from that. I think those guys, Road Warrior Hawk, I think his mind-blowing promos back in those days. Well, you know, all the crazy things that he used to say, it's just outrageous. Ultimate Warrior was a great promo guy. He talked absolute nonsense, but you listened to him and you didn't forget what he'd said. We're talking about them to this day because he was so off the wall. Who's the other guy I was just thinking of? But yeah, these kind of, I want to make a lot of noise so that you'll listen to me, basically. That is my outlook on it. That if my face comes on your phone pointing at the camera and shouting, I like to think that you're going to stop for a minute, put the noise on and listen to it, basically.
100%. 100%. And like so I've thoroughly enjoyed interviewing you.
Scott Steiner, that's the other I was going to mention. Scott Steiner.
Steiner.
As a promo guy. You know,
legendary
we
promos.
all know the Steiner math. We all quote the Scott Steiner promos because you remember them. You know what I mean? There's guys that are considered a great promo that are not very quotable at promos, but Scott Steiner's delivered a couple of the most quotable promos of all time. And all he's doing is, Scott Steiner's not a dumb guy, but he'll stand there and convince you that he's a big dumb musclehead yelling into the void. I think there is an art form to that that's not appreciated enough.
100%. And please keep shouting at the camera and doing what you do, because your promos, your interviews are absolutely the best. And I think, like I say, that's one of the things I enjoy doing about taking my kit to different shows, is giving people like yourself and people that aren't so confident the ability to practice their promos, to practice their interviews. And even if, like you say, they're not good, at least you've got something in the can you've practiced. You can kind of build on it from there.
If you watch as well, Wrestling Resurgence late last year, after they'd made their comeback, and I kind of reinvented myself there as a singles guy. I came in and attacked RJ Singh and Harry Singh after a match that they'd had, like a real emotional moment, and I came steaming in, beating both up. And then afterwards, we went to the new venue that Resurgence are using, the Y Theatre in Nottingham, in Leicester. And I sat down with Charles Wheeler, who's the referee there, and we did like a very open conversation. And if you go and find that video, it's something that I'm really proud of, that I got to do something completely different to anything I've ever done. I sat there, very calmly talked to Charles about my grievances, and went totally the opposite end of the scale. And if you could drop a link to that promo, I'll drop you a link to that promo, because it's something that I'm very, very proud of, to try the total opposite side of the coin and be that sort of, here's a big tough looking guy, but he's sitting down and talking quite reasonably, and I didn't expect that, when he was shot super well. My buddy Troy Grant of Troy Media, he came and did that, recorded that with us, edited it, put it all together, and did a great job. Obviously, that's my boy Troy there. That's something that I encourage everyone to go and check that out if you want to see what I can do with the microphone.
Absolutely. Send us the link. I'll put it in the description. Everybody can see what you're on about there. Everybody can see what you're on about. And you mentioned earlier about Hammerlock, and you mentioned that they are making their return after about 10 years. And there's the poster there. Tradition lives on, and it is October the 29th, Saturday the 29th of October this year. And there you are. You've been announced. You mentioned your opponent, Andy Wilde, and you put out a tweet saying that you're after the championship. You're after the big gold belt, and it will be kind of an honor and a privilege for you to put that around your waist. That is a beautiful belt. Tell it, what would that mean to you to kind of get the opportunity? I mean, obviously you're going to be wrestling again for Hammerlock, so that's going to be a real kind of like very proud moment for you. But to get the opportunity one day maybe to be in that main event, that would be pretty cool, wouldn't it? And a bit of a full circle moment for yourself.
Absolutely, man. I mean, belts are not the be all and end all to me. I want to just be out working in the right places as much as I can, working with the right people, showing people what I'm capable of in a pro wrestling ring. Belts are not the be all and end all to me. They never have been. They never will be. Um, I'm not a guy that has held a lot of singles championships in my time. I'm not a guy that's held a lot of tag championships, to be honest, either. And it's never something that I've tried to position myself to go, oh, this is what I want to be, is this guy. But that particular championship was one that was the first one that I used to go and watch regularly being defended in live and in person, because like Gary Steele, Jake the Snake Roberts, Johnny Moss, Conscience from NWA Scotland, and that was a position I never thought I would be in the conversation to be that guy. I was always in Hammerlock. I was always like a very low down the pecking order kind of guy, because I was so new to it. It's not that I was disrespected in any way. It's where I belonged at that time, because I was very, very new to the business. Like I say, I was a guy that didn't know what he was doing for years in this business, thinking that I did. But I never thought I'd be a guy that would be considered for that particular championship. Obviously, the promotion folded years and years ago, and it was just assumed that that was that for that. You know, no one will ever hold that belt again. So I shouldn't be bothered that it's not going to be me, because no one's ever going to hold that championship again. But then to see that picture and to see that belt, a lot of memories came flooding back of sitting ringside at Bedworth, watching that very belt being held above a referee's head as the bell was rung. And yeah, I can honestly say that would mean something to me to be able to bring that belt back home with me.
Absolutely. And that's going to be a tremendous card. It's a real stacked lineup already.
Oh, yeah.
29th of October. You're not going to want to miss that if you're in the area. But well, speaking of, you said earlier that you know, you spent many years thinking you knew what you was doing, but did you have many kind of light bulb moments where things did suddenly click, whether it was kind of backstage speaking to the boys, out in the middle of a match, making your entrance? What sort of light bulb moments did you have, and kind of how did that kind of change your direction?
I think the acceptance that I got from the All-Star Wrestling team when it came was kind of that moment for me.
Yeah.
That, like I say, it always felt like a bit of a closed door place that you couldn't get into. It's not really that. It's that they weeded out people that could do the job and were easy to work with, and people that are not in that position, people that are difficult, people that cannot get along with the team, because it is a workplace. So you got to understand that anyone can put up with anybody one day a month. But on the All-Star team, you would have to put up with the same guys night after night after night after night. You travel with them, you share a hotel with them, you build the ring with them, you wrestle the show with them, change the dressing room with them, like sharing a dressing room with them, changing together. You guys are together constantly, right? And to get their acceptance, that's a big deal to me. And you don't get that acceptance if you're not up to the job. If you're making life difficult for people, you don't get that acceptance. And that was a real moment where I use some for examples, like when I first, like I say, I first convinced Brian to give me a trial as a singles wrestler, and that was wrestling Butlins. And I'd wrestle Saturday and Sunday at Butlins, and I'd be wrestling Joel Redman for sort of 25 minutes in front of a couple of thousand people. I'm sure Joel will be the first to tell you that at that time he was not a happy guy for various reasons to do with the business, and he would run me ragged because I wasn't able to keep up with him. And it was never on him to reduce his pace for me to be able to keep up. It was always up to me to up my game to get up to his pace. And it wasn't happy. I wasn't happy at first, because every week we would do that match and he'd come backstage and he would just very bluntly tell me, that wasn't good, that wasn't good, that wasn't good. You missed this, you missed this, you missed this. It's not good enough. But then as the weeks went on, that kind of started to go away. And that was because I was starting to improve and get to where I needed to be. And we finally got to a point where I get to a show and find out that Joel had requested to go in a match with me. And like moments like that, it just kind of feels like, okay, that's acceptance. You know, that's a big, big mark of acceptance there. So yeah, you know, stuff like that, you kind of have to take that as a, yeah, maybe I do know what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 100%. And like I say, that's a huge mark of acceptance and an
Yeah.
extremely proud moment for you, I'm sure. Thinking to the future, like I say, this year celebrates your 20th anniversary in the business. But what more do you want to achieve within the pro wrestling business? Obviously, the UK scene is becoming more of a vibrant scene now. There's lots going on, lots of new promotions, lots of great wrestling to be had. Have you got things you want to accomplish and places you want to work or people you want to perform with? Any goals for yourself, Jim, for the
Of
future?
course. Yeah, you always have to have goals in this. I think you should always have goals. I don't like to publicise my goals too much, but I do have goals. There are countries I'd like to see as a professional. There are people I'd like to work with. Of course, in the UK, there are promotions I'd like to work with because I feel like I've hit, sort of the first division championship kind of thing, but I don't know if I've yet hit Premiership in terms of UK wrestling, if you get my drift from that. So, yeah, I think I'm somewhere in I don't know, maybe I'm somewhere in sort of mid-league in the championship at the moment, and we'll see if we can get further than that. But like I say, I don't really like to publicise my goals too much. They're in here, and I know what I want to achieve. I know how I plan to achieve it, but it's just something that I prefer to keep to myself and let people see it when it happens.
Completely understandable, and we all look forward to seeing how all of that unfolds over the next few years, I'm sure. But before we ask you for your socials, Jim, I just want to announce my September lineup on Wrestling with Johners Live. So from September onwards, so I'm going to bring up some pictures of the faces I have coming on the show over the next 4 or 5 weeks. And first of all, I've got Nathan Cruz coming on the show. Nathan Cruz is going to be coming on a Tuesday, the 13th of September, live, 8 p.m. UK time. One of the best professionals in the game. He's having a bit of a resurgence himself in 2022, doing some fantastic things out there across the UK, across the north of England, but a fantastic, I think he's been in the business 16 years there, says there on the poster. But Nathan Cruz will be coming on to the Wrestling with Jonas podcast on Tuesday the 13th. And then I've got Maggot, the WXW shotgun champion, coming on a Wednesday, the 21st of September, 8 p.m. UK time, 9 p.m. over in Germany. You're not going to want to miss this one. Maggot's doing some tremendous things in the UK as well, especially for Progress Wrestling, becoming a bit of a popular character there in Progress Wrestling in the Electric Ballroom. I saw him myself with my own eyes a couple of nights ago at the latest chapter show and doing some great things across Europe with WXW. But Maggot is another one you're not going to want to miss on the 21st. And then we've got RJ Singh coming onto the show live and exclusively on the Wrestling with Jonas podcast, Wednesday, the 28th of September, 8 p.m. UK time. RJ Singh, I mean, I can't wait to talk to him about his very rich and successful career. One of the best characters, one of the best technicians, one of the best wrestlers in the UK, if not further afield. And I can't wait to have RJ Singh on the podcast on the 28th. And to wrap up the month, now I've skipped around a little bit with dates here, but for good reason. And I got this guy coming on the show. Scott Garland, Scotty Too Hotty, will be coming on to the Wrestling with Jonas podcast Saturday, the 17th of September, 8 p.m. UK time. Scott Garland, formerly known as Scotty Too Hotty, many, many years in the WWF, and like I say, many, many years as a trainer, as a coach, the NXT over in the States, the Performance Center, and now doing some amazing things on the independent circuit in the States, over here in Europe and the UK. But Scott Garland, Scotty Too Hotty, will be coming on the show live and exclusive on Saturday the 17th. So you're not going to want to miss that one. But Jim, some pretty big names coming on the show in the month of September there, my friend.
Good stuff there, John. Well, very good stuff. Yeah.
Some pretty
RJ,
big names.
Again, he's a guy I've done some work with, and yeah, I'm sure that will be a really interesting chat. But yeah, obviously, Scotty Too High is the man. Great to meet him. Great to watch him work and hear the words he had to say at the end of Wrestling Carnival as well. That was, he said some incredible things. So yeah, I'll definitely be checking that out.
Awesome. But I'd say for anybody watching, listening, don't forget to subscribe to Wrestling with Johners on YouTube in particular. Follow us on Twitch, follow us on Facebook, so you can see all of them interviews live and exclusively on Wrestling with Johners. But Big Jim, it's been amazing speaking to you for about an hour and a quarter now. I'm going to ask you for your socials, so I know that we can find you, say hi, see some of your footage, and get to know you a bit better on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. But tell us where we can reach out and say hi to you, my friend.
Yeah, I'm mostly active on Twitter and Instagram these days. Henchman Wrestle on Twitter, which was a very fortunate mistake that I tried to put Henchman Wrestling into Twitter when I signed up the account and ran out of characters. So Henchman Wrestle, which is just the kind of thing that the henchmen would do. You know, if they were real people, they would make that mistake. So I'm not so far away from them as I thought I was. And Henchman Jim on Instagram, that I'm sure you're going to pop them up on the screen now. Yeah, Henchman_Jim on Instagram, which is probably where I do most of my interesting stuff there.
Absolutely. You can get him on their Facebook as well. Jim Diehard Wrestler on Facebook, but you're quite right. Henchman Wrestle on Twitter and Henchman_Jim on Instagram. So go following him. And the links, of course, will be in the description to this podcast. So click on those to reach out to Jim, say hi, and all that good stuff. Get to know Big Jim a bit more. But thank you so much for being an excellent guest on this episode of Wrestling with Johners. It's been fantastic learning about your glorious 20 years in the business. Some great stories there. But if you've got a final message to your family, friends, supporters out there that have supported you over the last 20 years, if you've got any kind of final words, any message that you'd like to pass on to them before we go?
Well, you know, to everyone that's had my back throughout this, to all my friends in the business that continue to look after me to this day, thank you all so much. It's been an absolute blast. If it all ends tomorrow, I'm very happy, but there's no plans for it to end tomorrow, so you're going to have to put up with me for a little bit longer, I'm afraid.
Indeed. Big Jim, thank you very much for coming on the show, and see you down the road, my friend.
Thank you for having me, John. Take care, man.
Cheers.